Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello and good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for the latest episode of Missions Talk. I'm Mike Falkenstine, president here at 1-8 Catalyst, and I'm here again with my co-host and friend, Steve Schirmer. Steve, you actually have brought on a guest today, and so I'll let you introduce him and introduce the topic. We've got a good guest today, don't we?
We do. So a couple of years ago, I was traveling and I got to meet this guy, Sonam, in another country. And then I think it was 2019, I actually finally got to go to Nepal, which is where he's from, and got to spend some time with him. And it was definitely one of those places I wish I could have stayed longer. My trip was way too short. And for those who have been to Nepal, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I've stayed in contact with him. We interact with each other a lot. And so I'm really excited that he's here with us today. So Sonam, welcome to our show, our Facebook Live show with Mike and I. And no, we did not plan the color coordination. It just kind of happened.
That's right.
So Sonam, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I'm Sonam from Nepal, and I'm based in Kathmandu. In the last almost now 30 years, been serving the Lord in this country. And I was serving in the Northeast India, Bhutan, and I spent a couple of years in mission field in the southern part of the Africa. And also I spent time in East Asia, a couple of years as a student, a missionary, work among the unreached group of people, and back to Nepal in 2016. And then I'm continuing serving the Lord and reaching to unreached group of people in this nation. And I'm married. I have my wife, and I had only one son. He's just 16 years old. So we serve together as a family to see more disciple making movement and among the unreached people group.
That's awesome.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for giving us your introduction. I will say for everyone who's watching, I've got to meet your wife and your son. Your son spent a lot of time with you and I as when I got to visit. And yeah, it was a lot of fun hanging out with you guys, seeing where you live, enjoying the culture and the food. So now I just want to get into our questions for this episode. And the first one is, let me preface it with this. We are going to be talking about COVID-19 to a degree, not about the disease itself, but we do want to talk about the impact. I think all of us recognize that the impact varies from country to country. And even within countries, it varies from state or province to province, city to city, things like that. Churches are all experiencing different things, but what we're experiencing here in the U.S. is definitely different from what you're experiencing over there. I would say we've had a much easier time, comparatively speaking, than you guys have in Nepal, and so that's why we invite you here, and we're excited that you're here to share your experience and your thoughts. And so, given the fluidness of the COVID situation from country to country, tell us how the pandemic has impacted Nepal. Tell us how it's impacting the people of Nepal, the churches of Nepal. Just give us an insight into what's happened, so we have a better idea when you answer later questions. That we have something to look to be able to give some context.
This part of the world, actually Nepal. So I look at different areas of that really impacted and affected very badly. So I will go with there are different areas. I will go with the political emergency. This COVID was really affected badly the political situation in Nepal, where all the political leader got a challenges, meaning that they had a conflict to who will going to hold the position. That was the biggest challenge. And at the meantime, different groups show up and establish the new leader and new parties during this COVID. And there we have seen that among the political emergencies, we have seen that anger, envy, and started within a political leadership. Public were struggling so many areas like development areas and support from the government leaders, but that did not happen. And the government was focusing only to solve the political problem, but not helping to the public. So that was first was the political emergency. The second emergency was um, also the economical emergency. Since pandemic started in Nepal, economic emergency raised with the various challenges, like more than 25,000 Nepalese people who are working in the board overseas, they back to country, and they were not able to get the good job in the country. 47% Nepalese, they lost their job actually in the private companies, and 35 business person, they collapsed their businesses, they lost their business, no single the rupees the income able to make during that pandemic time. And during that time also corruption was very strong. This COVID really the rise of kind of emergency in the economic was the corruption was very high, especially for the government side, and the local market price was very high, and the local people were not able to afford to buy the daily food. So that was the second emergency. The third emergency was during this pandemic, social emergency. Suicide cases was very high during this pandemic time in Nepal. Why? Because they have lost their job, which really causes there is no way to have any income sources, and that really affect that like family divorce, depression, and frustration. That really nearly 2,000, more than 2,000 Nepalese, the people committed suicide because of the losing their job and because of that job and frustration, as well as the other issues which I have already mentioned. And other thing was the abortion case was very high during this pandemic time. And also the drugs and gang fight, crime cases rose in these different communities and during this pandemic time. The other area was the spiritual emergency also was very high. Since pandemic started, spiritual emergency was there because the temple, church, monastery, and monks, and as well as other religion, the center was closed down last 9 to 10 months. Religious group people were not able to connect their sacraments, and they did not help to spiritual healthy life to having their spiritual disciplines. The church started online worship service. There was the first time that we had never experienced those kind of worship service here. Religious leaders, most of the religious groups, their schedule did not work well, and other religions like Hindus, they were making demonstration in the public. They are asking to allow to worship in the temple because of their spiritual life was totally dry. And also because of the religious activities, also the loss of the economical source also was very, very high. So this side and finally, as I said that like a church situation was also very badly affected during this pandemic. I think the more than 60% churches, Nepal, those churches were independent, the rented building that was totally closed down. There was no way to continue to have the worship service. More than 55 independent church leaders, they were not able to get any payment. They lost their job. because the most of the independent church, their resources was from the local churches. And the most of the Bible seminaries, schools, training centers, all they closed down. All of their students, they went back their home. Only the few seminaries, they started online courses. And more than 7 to 9% new believers, they left the Christian faith because of the pandemic. Because they didn't get the fellowship, they did not get the kind of discipleship during that time, and people were not able to move here to there. And various new Christian association group was established during this pandemic among the Christian community. Over 15 church leaders, pastors who have died with this pandemic. That was very sad news here. And about more than 37 church members also died with this pandemic, and that was also very difficult situation. And that's all that what happened in this country, I think.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot going on. It sounds like, COVID really affected Nepal, right? It seems like it really affected. Sonam, out of all of that, I have a couple of questions. So it sounds like the different industries have really been affected with COVID. What are there certain types of industries like restaurants, or were there certain industries that were affected more than others? Like what was affected the most? Yeah.
Yes, I mean there was a kind of a local restaurants, bar. The most of the people they're working in that area. Also the local companies, factories. I mean, you can imagine that there was a lockdown almost a 9 to 10 months actually.
Right.
The people really wanted to go back to home. There was no way to go, no transportation, and there was no income sources. I mean, and there was no hope actually. So most of the daily workers actually, the private companies, they were really affected.
Okay, and then you said something about the churches, right? Many churches were meeting in like a rented facility, and so then they were closed. And then I heard something about churches going to online. Did many of those churches that were closed because they were in a rented facility, did they just move to some kind of an online service?
Oh yes. Yes, I mean the rented place. There was not a 1 month or 2 months. It was almost the year. I think 10 months.
Right.
And then there was no any income sources. There was because the most of the churches they were run by the collecting offering and tithing. This is the normal that we have the local churches. Now, I mean the church rented was quite a amount of the money. So the church committee they decided better to close down this place, move that stuffs in those who have a house. They store one room in the believer's house, and then they have started like an online service, which is very profitable for them because they don't no need to pay anything. That saves us lots of things. Yes.
Right. I mean that makes sense, right? If you're depending on the tithing and giving to pay that rent, but you can't collect that anymore because people are not coming to your facility, right? I'm sure that made it very hard. Are some of those churches slowly beginning to reopen? Are there some of them that are reopening now?
Well, I mean, there are some churches now, they have merged together, adopted by the mega churches. In other area now, they have allowed to use those churches to use that building. Those who have their own building, meaning like a morning service or afternoon service or evening service. They're trying to make a turn to use that facilities. Those who have the church building already. That was one thing is going on, and the second thing was some of the independent churches now they have become united. They become a one church now.
Oh, okay.
So that is also going on. Yes.
Okay, so they've kind of some of them have merged together. They're coming together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Which, Steve, I think almost a year ago when we did some of these initial episodes about COVID, I think that's something that your pastor had said, right? That some of these churches would probably, and I think Matthew Ellison said the same thing, that ministries and churches that might be an effect of that is, merging together. And so, Steve, I know that, we're also interested in, I think you had a question about missions too, didn't you? In Nepal, how it was been affected?
Yeah, so I know this, through Sonam, there's a lot of churches, or at least several churches, heavily involved in missions in different ways, both in Nepal and just in the various people groups around the country. So I'm curious, based on pre-COVID and now current COVID, a year out and in the future, how has the missions part of the church in Nepal been impacted?
Well, I mean, first of all, we really want to say thank you, those missionaries. I mean, we had a very long history that how God brought the missionary from the western part, some Western European missionary who came alongside with this country. And we are so thankful to God that the missionary who brought the gospel, and we are able to know the Christ now, and we are freely worshiping Him in this country. And as we look back to the Nepali churches, are now we have been growing so faster in the church planting movement, but the most of the church organization looking to how we can involve in the global mission. That is the one of the mindset that every single church leader has, but still there is something that we're trying to move forward. That's why we are trying to mobilize the local churches, that we could able to send our missionaries or receive the missionaries to reach out to this group of people, which is we are still praying. Now, when we come to the mission, how much affected? I tell you that one of the things very good during this pandemic time. That one thing was very good, because during this time, whole church, whole country, actually, all the different denominations, even independent church or mega churches, nationwide, we have started prayer movement during this pandemic. That was awesome. That was awesome. Still, that prayer movement is going on. And 7 different provinces, we have 7 different provinces, all the church group joined together for prayer movement, which is
great.
still, yeah. And then we were not able to involve directly in the mission, meaning that to reach out to the people group, but God really allows us to go with a different kind of the resources that during that time, most of the church or mission organization, they have involved with the emergency relief work to bring the relief to the believers and the non-believers and different religious groups. That was one of the biggest opportunity to build the relationship with the other religious group and to bring that hope through the relief work. So that was a kind of a mission was there actually. Not really affected openly, but there was a source of that to bring some kind of a some kind of a holistic mission to reach out to the people. And also there was the medical campaigns. Some of the doctors who just been a front line to bring kind of a relief, medication was there. And meantime also relief work was really open the doors to bring the gospel to the people. Because of there are some kind of evidence that now I am leading one of the fellowship now because of the relief work. There are the whole people, bunch of the people who came to know the Lord, and that become now one of the house churches. So that kind of the God really work at during the pandemic. But again, this is the opportunity. This way God really work out. But if you look at our organization planning, the organizers that we have planned already, the year planning, that part, it did not go well. Actually, definitely, we are all our schedule canceled, our traveling schedule canceled. Right. Nothing happened actually, and we had a very difficult time. To even the field worker was not able to travel back to home. So those are the challenges was there. the meantime, God also used the different ways to continue his mission.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's good. That's good. And Sonam, just so you know, I think just about everybody involved in missions in some ways, has had a experience like what you have had, right? The field worker, going out to other places. Obviously, if you just can't travel, it's hard to do that, right? So, but I'm excited to hear that during COVID, that the churches in Nepal have gathered together for prayer and for some other relief efforts. And it's sort of a, hey, be involved where you can be involved, right, situation. And obviously the work of God never stops, and it might change, but I'm just excited to hear that you guys have continued to do what you can do for this time.
Yeah.
I agree. And, I was just thinking as you were talking yesterday, I came across an article about as unreached as Japan is, the earthquake, 9.0 earthquake 10 years ago this month up in northeast Japan. And the result of that, one of the results was just how the churches that do exist in the northeast and across Japan just rallied together. And they're saying the local believers are saying that the gospel is now, the people are more open to the gospel. They're more open to talking with Christians about their faith. They've seen how Christians have come together to serve the people up in Japan. And as a result, they've seen dozens of churches planted in that area, house churches, traditional churches. So, no one likes the pandemic and no one wants it to happen, but it did.
Right. That's right.
And since it did happen, we also need to be looking for the silver lining in all this. And I'm excited to hear just what the church in Nepal is doing, and one of the things you mentioned that really got me thinking about was you talking about the denominations, the independent churches, all coming together, basically just throwing off their obstacles and the barriers that we build up within our churches. That's what happened in Japan. Unfortunately, it took a crisis of sorts to wake us up. But at the same time, I'm thankful that we're waking up and that's happening in Nepal. So I am curious. I know culturally speaking, maybe we view, planning for the future differently, but I am just curious, has this impacted how you're viewing, let's say, what would be your view, let's say 5 years from now, 3 years from now? How do you think missions will look from an outside coming in, but also how Nepali churches are going to be involved in it?
Good question.
Post-pandemic.
Well, the Nepali church has become Nepali church leader has learned a lot during this pandemic, actually. And what I have seen that Nepali churches are becoming more responsible now to how to face all those kind of emergency things will happen in the future. I think I have seen that churches are more willing to do to unite themselves. If anything that comes kind of ahead of next 3 to 5 years, I have seen that churches are more willing to come together, either a spiritual side or social side or economical side. They are coming together actually because we have seen also during this pandemic time, even though we had a huge earthquake in 2015 here, and we have seen that most of the support was from outside. But during that time also, there are some kind of a legal factor is not really fitting with to getting kind of a source from the outside. When you look at in the country laws and some kind of a barriers. So because of that, Nepali church leader has faced a lot of challenges during this time, pandemic time, and now they are preparing. I tell you that fact. one of the things that I tell you that for the future, now the churches are starting business as a mission. This is the business. Now they have starting business as a mission. Now most of the church, they involve in the sort of the business business as a mission. We have seen lots of guest house. We have lots of coffee shop. We have some cattle farming, microfinances has been going through the Nepali churches now. So that is what I want to say. That is the church are looking themselves, depending to whatever the situation will come, they will going to handle with any situation. And other side was agriculture, farming, and a small business funding now is coming up, microfinance, as I said, and then also the other different opportunity, whatever that we have, like all kind of businesses, all kind of like income sources, generate programs, cattle farming, agricultures. Now the church leader are encouraging to the leaders or church members to go with this. So saying all these things, it shows that we are preparing, Nepali churches are preparing for some kind of a economical standards to grow that would help in the future kind of a supporting system if anything comes up. And beside of that, also the church leaders are coming together. They're uniting themselves in a prayer. They're supportive each other's. As I said, that there was a kind of a barrier before. Now God has bringing some kind of a move. Whole area, whole country's leaders are now coming together as a one body of Christ.
Oh, that's
so
great
that's
to hear.
What I have experienced so far.
And
yeah,
I just want to say before Mike gets into his part, I've actually seen one of these guest houses and coffee shops that he's referring to.
Oh, really?
And let me just say, it was beautiful. It was an immaculate place. Definitely, I would highly recommend it, far above any of those 5-star hotels. Food was, it was just a beautiful guest house. Small hotel is really what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't even remember. I think it was called Grace Hotel or Grace.
Yes,
something.
Exactly. You're right.
Yeah, I highly recommend them if you get to visit one of those places. Of course, I don't know how you find it online. You may have to. We may have to ask Sonam how you find it, but he can help you.
That's right. Well, Steve, I'm ready. We can go whenever. Well, we need to get the vaccine, I guess, but at some point, it'd be fun to go. Yes. That's great.
Most welcome.
And Sonam, that is exciting to hear, right? Business's mission, and the guest house, particular, and coffee shop, just a neat opportunity to minister to people who are staying at the guest house, right? I mean, neat. I mean, you've got them right there to have an opportunity to be what we would call Jesus with skin on right there to them. It's that's exciting. So, Sonam, as we begin to come to the end of the episode, as we always do, I'd like to ask you 2 quick questions. One, if anyone who is watching this, and we do have people from multiple countries who watch this show, if any of them are God is developing in them a heart for Nepal, what is the best ways that they could be involved, or are there some greatest needs that you all would have in terms of anyone that's watching? If you want to be involved, here's the best way to do that in Nepal.
Well, I mean, there are lots of opportunities to come. We are looking to Nepali churches are now become more sustainable. They are more equipped.
Good.
They are more sustainable. They can manage the things in terms of the mission, in terms of the other ministry activities. But we need kind of expertise to come to mentor our leaders. We need kind of a medical person to come conduct some kind of a short-term medical camps. We need some kind of young people to come and mobilize our young people in the church. And also come alongside with whatever the skills. We have the business opportunities here, in this country. You can come and train us, our Nepali leaders, church members, to
Mm.
more business training. Also, we need kind of a more like a equipping part, to bring some kind of the resources to come and help our church leaders and the
Mm.
church young people, next generation that we talk about, and that we can mobilize the local churches to go to the mission field or go to the unreached group of people. So we need those kind
Okay.
of prayer partners. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. That's great. So resources, it sounds like training, and medical really are the three ways. The medical piece is interesting. Sonam, would that be like a 1 or 2 week sort of medical camp, and people would come who need medical care?
Yes, I mean maybe 10 days. The
Oh,
short
10
term is that
days.
we will the 10 days that
Okay.
they could come and just go to the rural area, and the people, those who are really need kind of a medical help. That is the one of the source that you can get involved the community, like a close communities where you can witnessing yourself as a Christ ambassador to those community through your medical skills.
Okay. And then the question, sort of a side question, that I don't know the answer to. In Nepal, what are the main languages that are spoken? Do
Well,
most?
it depend on the area where you go, but we speak Nepali,
Okay,
Nepali
Nepali.
national language, and now more this generation become a more English speaking generation also now. No
Okay.
problem for anyone who wants to comes. And but different area, different tribal group, they have their own dialects. Though they have different dialects, but we speak Nepali very well. So
Okay. So
Nepali,
so any
come on.
kind of Christian training, we may need some translators involved. But we can do that, right? That's completely fine. So, final question from me, Sonam. If again, as people are watching this, and of course, we're going to be encouraging them to be praying for Nepal. Give people maybe 2 or 3 quick things that they can be praying about for, either your ministry, for the church in Nepal. What can people be praying about?
Well, I would say that pray for my ministry as I involve in the totally unreached group of people, which we call that. If I say that unreached group of people where there are very less missionaries, there is no church. I am reaching out to the like a
Awesome.
EM community, which I call the Muslim community, which is the desperately need. So pray for the more workers to come and
Okay.
open doors. I'm mobilizing local churches to go and involve in the ministry in this community. So pray for that for my ministry as I'm continue reaching out this community. Also pray for the entire Nepali church. We need to change our mindset. Now we are planning to send the missionaries from Nepal to nearest country like India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, or China, but something is still holding back. I don't know
Hmm.
what. So we need to break through this stronghold that the Nepali people may go to the mission field as a missionary. That is the one of the move that we are looking to break through. So pray for
Uh,
that. Nepali churches
okay.
are
Those are two
willing to send.
fantastic things to be praying about for sure. Obviously, Steve and I and many others who watch this show will get particularly excited about this unreached people group that you're reaching. We have a deep heart for those that are not yet reached. But then also this stronghold, yeah, we can definitely be praying about that because I can sense that the Nepali church is, slowly getting more and more ready to go to other countries and do ministry, and so we can be praying about that as well. Steve, as we end the episode, any final comments, questions from you?
Well, final comments. She was talking about medical clinics, leadership
Hmm.
training, all those kinds of things. So if anyone's out there interested, just reach out to me because I'm going to be arranging some of this stuff for him. We've already been talking about some of this, and we've done some of it in the past. So just reach out if you're interested, especially if your church is interested.
Right.
We would love to get whole churches involved. We would love to see churches adopting Nepal, or the unreached people groups that Sonam was referring to, that I've been watching him engage over this past couple of years. So yeah, so just reach out if you're interested. I'd love to help you, and that way you can go and work alongside Sonam and his colleagues over there.
That's right. And Steve, I'll make a note about, because you mentioned kind of, if there are any churches interested, in a upcoming episode, we'll have our friend Brian Gandy on the show, and he had already, as we've been communicating with him, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it was something like, if you in the United States, if you attend a evangelical church, you already have more theological training than most. I mean, the point being, it doesn't take it's just not the pastors or the seminary trained, right? I mean, you can come and do a, simple course on something, and if you've been sitting under biblical teaching for years and years in your church, I mean, you can use that then to do things like training in Nepal, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, Sonam, thank you so much for joining us. I'm not only glad to have met you, but to be able to highlight, Nepal and what God is doing there. And thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I'm glad to.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And I want to thank all of you for being with us. It's always great to have you, and it's exciting to be able to continue to talk about these things and learn what God is doing in other places around the world. And I'm thankful that you're joining us in this journey. It's been fun. So appreciate you all. And we'll look forward to seeing you with us on the next episode of Missions Talk.